We continue now at the top of Daf 15b Meseches Moed Kattan. This is Moed Kattan Daf 15b. On the previous summit, the Gemara said that an Avil is chayiv to overturn his bed, and the Gemara says the source of this is the Tani Bar Kapara, that Bar Kapara taught the following: Demus diyukni nasati bohen. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I put my image in human beings, as Rashi over here says. B'tselem Elokim asa eshadam. The pasuk says that man was created in the image of God. Uva avonoseim hafachti. It's because of their sins that I've had to overturn. Meaning, because of their sins, this person has died. This person who was in the image of God died, and the image of God was overturned, so to speak. So therefore, kafu mitosein olah. Therefore, when the person dies and there's avelus going on, the Avil has to turn over the bed for that reason. The Gemara says, Menuda u'metzora mahin b'chfias hamita. What about someone who's ostracized? Or what about somebody who's a metzora? Do they have to overturn their bed? And the Gemara says, Teku, that we will leave as a question. Avil aser basias malacha. And Avil is forbidden to do work. T'chsiv, because the pasuk says, V'afachti chagechem la'evil. It says your holiday is going to be turned into avelus. So it's exactly what it seems like it is saying. Ma chag aser b'malacha. We're comparing the avelus to a chag. Just like a chag is aser in malacha, af avil aser b'malacha. So too, someone who's in avil is aser to do malacha. Menuda ma'u basias malacha. What about one who's ostracized? Is he allowed to do work? Amar Rav Yosef says, Tashma, come in here, Kashamru aser basias malacha lo amru ela biyom. Avol belayla mutter. It says when we say that a person, this is again talking about the people who are fasting, when we're fasting for the rain, so it says that they're not allowed to do malacha also. So when we say that those individuals are not allowed to do malacha, that's only during the daytime. But during the nighttime, it's mutter. V'chein motzi b'menuda uva ova avil. And the Brisa says the same is true by a menuda and by an avil, by one who's ostracized and by one who is an avelus. So the implication certainly seems to be that a menuda is not allowed to do malacha. And that's what the Gemara says. My lava kulu. Is it not going on everything? It's saying the menuda is asur in all of these things that we're talking about previously. And the Gemara says not necessarily lo no ashar. It could be that when it says v'chein atamotzi b'menuda uva avil, it's going on some other halachas, Rashi will say, but maybe it's not going on asiyas malacha. Rashi over here says lo ashar de katani atifas harosh. Could be going on the atifas harosh. That halacha is true by menuda. Tamrin hasan b'tainas tzibur misatvin v'yoshvin kimenudin. It said that on these public fast days, again, like fasting for rain and similar things, it says that they would wrap themselves and sit as if they were menudin. So that's going on that a menuda is chayiv b'atifas harosh, but it might not be going on the idea of asr b'asiyas malacha. The Gemara continues, Tashma, come in here, a proof, menuda shona v'shonin lo. We said this earlier, menuda is allowed to teach Torah, and you could teach him Torah, niskar v'niskarin lo, and then he can be hired out to others, and others can be hired to him. That certainly implies that he is allowed to do work. The Gemara says, Shma mina, indeed you see this is a proof that a menuda can do work. Mitzora ma'u b'asiyas malacha. What about a mitzora when it comes to doing work? To that the Gemara says, Teku, we will leave that as a question. Avil aser berachitza, and avil is not allowed to wash. T'chsiv v'al tasuchi shemen. It says that the avil is not supposed to put on oil. Urachitza b'chlal sicha, and bathing is considered part of anointing with oil. Therefore, just like the avil cannot anoint with oil, so too the avil is not allowed to bathe. Menuda ma'u berachitza. What about one who's ostracized? Is he allowed to bathe? Amar Rav Yosef says, Tashma, come in here. The following proof, Kisha amru aser berachitza, when they talked about the fact that they are aser berachitza, lo amru ala kol gufo. That iser applies to the entire body. Again, this is talking about those who are fasting for rain and similar things. Aval panav yadav v'raglav mutter. But even when we say aser berachitza, it's only the body. But when it comes to the face and the hands and the feet, it's okay to wash those parts of the body. And then again it says that same line, V'chein atamotzi b'menuda uva avil. The same is true by a menuda and an avil. Sounds like by a menuda as well, there's going to be a problem of rechitza. My lava kulu, and the Gemara says, is it not going on everything? Everything that we mentioned by the Tainas Tzibor applies to the menuda, including the prohibition of bathing. And the Gemara again says, lo no ashara, it's going on the other halachas of Tainas Tzibor. It's not necessarily going on the bathing. Rashi over here says, urechitza b'chlal sicha t'chsiv atavo kamayim b'kirbo ucheshemen bi'atzmos. If it's learned from a pasuk, pasuk talks about putting on oil and bathing in the same pasuk, water and oil in the same pasuk in Tehillim, and therefore they are compared. Kisha amru aser b'rechitza b'Tainas Tzibor. Again, that was a brisa by Tainas Tzibor, so we're comparing the iser rechitza of Tainas Tzibor to what would be by a menuda as well. And the Gemara says, akulu, isn't it going on everything, including rechitza? A rechitza nami de menuda aser, it's going on rechitza as well. Lo ashara. No, what's going on the others. Kamar de Menuda Islay Din Dahani Tanio Sibur. Other halachas of Tanio Sibur apply to Menuda. It does not necessarily refer to the halacha of Rechitza, so therefore it is no proof. And the Gemara continues, Mitzora Ma'u B'Rechitza. So what's the halacha by a Mitzora when it comes to a Rechitza? Is a Mitzora allowed to bathe? To that the Gemara says, Teku. Again, we leave that as a question. Avil Aser ben Ilas Hasandalin. Avil is not allowed to wear shoes. This we learn out also from what the pasuk says to Yecheskel. Yecheskel was an exception. You're supposed to wear shoes unlike a regular Avil. Mechlal dekuli al Aser. That implies that a normal standard Avil should not be wearing shoes. Menuda Ma'u ben Ilas Hasandal. What about one who's ostracized? Is that person allowed to wear shoes? Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says, Tashma, come here the following proof. Again, bringing a proof from Tainus Tzibor, Kisha Amru Aser ben Ilas Hasandal, when they talk about the fact that in the Tainus Tzibor you can't wear these shoes, Lo Amru Ela Be'ir, that's only true in the city, Avol B'derech Mutter, but if you're out on the road, it's okay to wear shoes. Hakeitzad, how so? Yatsa L'derech Noel Nichnas Li'ir Cholitz, if you're out on the road, put on the shoes, you go into the city, take off the shoes. Again, it says the same line, V'chein ata motzei b'menuda uva Avil. The same is true by a menuda and by an Avil. Again, seems to be saying that menuda is the same and cannot wear shoes. My lav akulu, is it not going on all the halachas of Tainus Tzibor apply to a menuda, same as the Gemara before? And the Gemara answers the same way, lo no ashara, it's going on some of the other halachas of Tainus Tzibor apply to menuda, but not necessarily this particular halacha. Mitzora Ma'u ben Ilas Hasandal. What about a Mitzora? Is a Mitzora allowed to wear shoes? To that the Gemara says Teku. We'll leave that as a question. Avel Aser B'Tashmish Hamita. Someone who's in mourning is not allowed to have relations. Techsiv, like the pasuk says, Vayinachim David es Bathsheva Ishto Vayavo Eleha. So it says that David, after he was comforted, Vayinachim David, so then he had relations with Bathsheva. Mechlal D'Meikara Aser. It sounds like when he was in Avelus, it was Aser to have relations. Menuda Ma'u B'Tashmish Hamita. What about one who's ostracized? Can they engage in Tashmish Hamita? Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says, Tashma, come in here a proof. Kalosan Shanim Shayisrael B'Midbar Menudin Hayu. All of the years that Klal Yisrael was in the wilderness, they were considered ostracized. V'shimshu mitosehen, and in that case they did. It says they did have relations at that time. Sounds like a menuda is allowed to engage in tashmish hamita. Gemara says, Amarle Abayas, Abayas said to Rav Yosef, Vidilma menuda l'shamayim shani. Maybe it's different over there, like we said earlier, that in that case they were menuda l'shamayim. They were ostracized from heaven. Dekil, and maybe that's more lenient, Abayas says. Now, the Gemara earlier said that it's more strict. So, Kiel, now you're suggesting that that's more lenient. V'amr Chomer, the previous Amr, you kept saying that Menuda L'Shamayim is stricter. So now you're arguing the opposite. So the Gemara says, no, Sfuke Mesafkali. The truth is, Abai is not sure whether Menuda L'Shamayim is stricter or more lenient. So, Zil Hacha Kamad Chile, V'Zil Hacha Kamad Chile. Every proof you bring, he pushes you off to the other direction, basically saying you cannot bring a proof from Menuda L'Shamayim. And the Gemara continues, Mitzora Ma'u B'Tashmish Hamita. What about a Mitzora? Can a Mitzora engage in Tashmish Hamita? Tashma, come in here a proof. The Tanya, the Brisa says, V'yasha michutz la'alo. It says that he has to be outside of his tent. Shehei kemenuda ucha avel. V'aser b'tashmish hamita. It says it should be like a menuda and an avel and aser and tashmish hamita. Seems to be forbidden. Ve'ein alo el ishto. The word alo over here, michutz l'ahalo, the tent actually refers to his wife. And we see that. Shenemar, like the pasuk says, leich emor lahem, shuvu lachem li'alechem. It says, go tell them to return to your tents. That also is a reference to returning to your wives. Shma minah. So the Gemara says, indeed, this is a proof that a mitzora is forbidden in tashmish hamita. So the Gemara says, "V'nifshat nami lemenuda." So 1 second, this should also be a proof to a menuda, because you asked before about a menuda. Is a menuda aser b'tashmish hamita? And here it said that sheyehei kemenuda, that this individual, the mitzvah, should be like a menuda, apparently forbidden in tashmish hamita. So the Gemara says again a similar answer to the Gemara gave on the previous Amud. Amar Ravuna Breder Pinchas. Ravuna Breder Pinchas says, Mishmei Rav Yosef, in the name of Rav Yosef, Mikatani she'aser sheyehei kemenuda uchavel. It doesn't say aser like a menuda is aser. It says he should be like a menuda. B'mili achronisa, it's referring to other things. He should be like a menuda in other respects. V'aser nami b'tashmish hamita. And also the mitzvah is forbidden in tashmish hamita. You don't need to read the brisa that it means to say that a menuda is aser in tashmish hamita. Avel eino mishaleach karbonosav. And Avel is forbidden to send karbonos to be brought in the Beis HaMikdash. Not allowed to do that. The Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon says shlomim. Pasuk says carbon shlomim. Bizman shu shalom. You only send the carbon shlomim at a time when you're whole, when you're complete. Below bizman shu onein. When a person is an onein, Again, Onan is the stage right before Avelos, but when you're in that state of Avelos, you can't send karbanos. Gemara says, Menuda mao sheyishlach karbanosov. What about a menuda, someone who's ostracized? Is he allowed to send karbanos? Amar Rav Yosef says, Tashma, come and hear a proof. Kol osan shanim shayu Yisrael b'midbar. All of those years that the Klal Yisrael was in the wilderness, Menudan hayu, they were considered ostracized. V'shalchu karbanos, and they were able to send karbanos. Sounds like a menuda is allowed to send a carbon to the Beis Hamikdash. Amar le Abaye said again the same kind of rejection. V'dil menuda l'shamayim shani dekil. Maybe one who's ostracized from heaven is different. Maybe that's more lenient. Gemara says again, kil. You think that's more lenient? V'amar chamir. On the previous Amud, you suggested that a menuda l'shamayim is stricter, and the Gemara again says sfuke mesafkile. Again, Abaye has a doubt, doesn't know whether menuda l'shamayim is different in the sense that it's stricter, or perhaps it's more lenient. Umadchile, and he's always able to push off the proof, essentially saying menuda l'shamayim might be different, maybe it's stricter, or menuda l'shamayim might be different, maybe it is more lenient. The Gemara continues, Mitzora ma'ash yishlach karbanos. What about a Mitzora? Is he allowed to send his karbanos? And the Gemara says, Tashma, coming here, the following proof to Tanya, we learned in a Braisa, V'achare taharaso, after the person becomes pure, Achar prishaso min hameis shivas yomim, after separating from the mace for 7 days, Yisperulo counts for himself, Elu zayin yemei sviro, refers to the 7 days of counting, Uviyom bo el hakodesh el hachatzar hapnimis l'sharis b'kodesh, Yakrv chataso, and then it says the day that he comes to the kodesh, to the inner chatzar to serve, he's going to bring his carbon chatas. And Rashi over here says, Yisperulo, what is this pasuk talking about? La'el minei ksiv, the pasuk right earlier said as follows: Ve'el meis adam lo yavo l'tamei. It says he shouldn't become tamei. Over Kohen mishtoi. The pasuk over here is referring to a Kohen. It's talking about the fact that a Kohen is not supposed to become tamei meis. Ve'acharei taharaso. Pasuk says after he becomes pure. Dahainu mi prishaso min hameis. He separates from the mace. Mishayafresh min hameis monin shivas yimei hazaoso. So when you're trying to purify yourself, you have to count 7 days where you're going to go through the purification process, be sprinkled with the mechatos. So shivas yamim acherim yisperulo. He has to count another 7 days. Now the fact that the pasuk uses the language of counting, below nakat hazo, and doesn't use the language of sprinkling, shaminan shivas yimei sefiro im nitztara. So we're understanding the pasuk to mean 7 days of counting for one who is a mitzora. We're understanding the pasuk not simply to refer to a kohen who becomes tamei, but to refer to someone who's tamei as a mitzora. Uviyom bo biyom ta'araso. It says the day he comes on purification, ksib b'kohen gadol. That's what it says by a kohen gadol. And we should note that this pasuk is a pasuk in Sefer Yechezkel. It's going to be further explained in the next Amud. We'll see that in the next video on Daf Tes Zayin Amud Aleph.